Welcome to the Abundant Soul podcast. Today, Ashley and I are thrilled to introduce Lauren Joy Rose, a soul contract and divine healing practitioner. Lauren has a fascinating approach. She uses the name you were given at birth to reveal your spiritual roadmap, helping you navigate life's challenges and discover your soul's true purpose. Through her work, she clears energy blocks and limiting beliefs, bringing you into alignment with your soul signature so you can move through life with grace and ease. Lauren's own soul contract reveals that she's here to empower others to embrace their authentic selves and share her knowledge with the world. This divine insight led her to create her business, Empower Healing, and her podcast, Let's Talk Vibes. We're so excited to dive deep in Lauren's journey. Please join us in welcoming Lauren. Hello, ladies.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes. So happy that you are here. Thank you for joining us today.
I am so excited. I have been listening to your podcast all week. I am loving it so much. And it's really interesting. For the last 2 years, I've just been so on like an audiobook kick and just devouring books, like reading like 60 books a year. But then I'm not listening to as many podcasts. I know, right? I used to just be so in a podcast mode and just like finding a new podcast. So you listen to all the episodes, and I just feel like I haven't done that in such a long time until your show, because I'm loving it so much. So it's like very high praise that it's like got me back into podcasts.
Oh, thank you.
That's so cool.
It is cool. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the feedback. And also a little backstory. So Lauren and I met in a little mystery school, and we connected back then. Gosh, was that like 2 or 3 years ago?
Almost 3 years ago. It was like summer 2022.
Wow.
And I feel like you were just getting into like the soul contract work. I feel like you were at the part where you were studying it, getting into it, and you're like, is this what I want to do? Am I going to branch out and do it? And I remember we did some readings together, and I was like, girl, you are gifted in this. Like, this is amazing. So I kind of want to know how you got started into it. So where did you find it, and what made you kind of want to dive deep into that?
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting, with that hindsight, right? I can just so see being divinely guided, and that this is so my path, and I was so meant to be doing this work, but that wasn't quite obvious from the beginning. I did find this at the beginning of my spiritual awakening, and I went through my spiritual awakening like many people did in 2020. 2019 to 2021 is sort of seen as this great awakening period, and a lot of people are talking about 2024 and 2025 are going to be even more than that, which is really incredible. It's going to be incredible to see that happen. But yeah, I went through my awakening in 2020. I had not been a spiritual person. I didn't come from a spiritual family, or not one of those people who's like, my gifts were online from childhood. Like, that was not me, right? I was very scientific and logical and analytical. And when I went through my awakening, honestly, I was like, is this a mental health crisis? Because it was just like, that was so much more of the world I was coming from. And in 2020, when I'm going through this experience, and it was the end of the year, and it really aligned perfectly with my Saturn return, having Saturn in the 8th house. And this is when Saturn's going into Aquarius, and astrology's kind of helps me as part of what got me to really have that awakening in a lot of ways, by sort of my therapist being like, what's your rising sign? I was like, what is a rising sign? And we looked it up together, and then I was reading more about it, and I was just like, oh my God, this is great. And when I first went through the awakening, there was this part of me that was just like, do not go online, because I know I can be very naive, and I'm just going to believe everything, and I have no barometer of knowing what's true and what's not true. And I know you can't believe everything that you read on the internet. So for like a month or so, I did not go online. And then I finally did, because I just got to the point of, I was like, I have so many questions, and there's no one in my life who can answer them. And so I went online, and I was very cautious still, because I was like, how do I know? Don't have this barometer of truth yet. And I found this medium, Rebecca Rosen, and I felt like I could trust her because my great grandmother's name, who I am named after, my middle name is Rose. And so Rosen, and her mother's name was Rebecca. So this person, Rebecca Rosen, I was just like, okay, I'm taking this as a sign
Wow.
to listen and that I can trust this information. And I also had Googled her and she had been on Oprah, and I was like, okay, this is not quite some rando. Like, this feels vetted.
Yeah.
And so it was through her videos, and she just talks about soul contracts at one point, and she mentions that, because she's a medium, so she's talking a lot with people who have passed on. Obviously, that's her, her deal. And she's talking about how all of our exit points are written in our soul contract, and that, it can be like the way that we die in a sort of like a more various way. Like, is it going to be kind of your own fault in a way, or is it going to be this or that? Is it going to be late in life? Is it going to be early? It might not be to the day, but it's kind of the flavor is in there, and that you've decided that even before you're born, kind of what your potential exits will be, and you probably put in 3 or 4 potentials. And she was talking about, like, if you are supposed to maybe, or if you have chosen to die in a car accident, you'll have these near misses in your life. And it's a way of being like, are you sure you still want this as your exit point? And
Whoa.
because you can
That's
then,
insane.
yeah, because it's the idea that, like, if you have it in your exit, you're going to die because you don't wear your seatbelt, you're going to have a near miss. And it's going to be like, hey, do you want to change your behavior and start to wear your seatbelt? And I thought instantly of my uncle, who he died when I was 10 years old, a week before my 11th birthday. He was 52 years old, and he died in a cycling accident. And I knew that he had had near misses. And it was like instantly in my mind, I was like, his exit was that he would die doing what he loved. And the story told at his funeral was that when he was first gifted a bike for his 8th birthday, they lived on the top of a hill. He went down the hill, crashed into a tree, and he had to go to the hospital. And I was like, oh, right away. They're like, are you sure? And he's like, yeah, I'm sure. And then when my cousin was born, he was in the hospital because of an accident, and he had lost his sense of taste and smell. And it was like, are you sure? And he clearly was like, I'm sure, because then that did end up being his exit from the world. But I was just so kind of amazed by this, and just felt so inherently like, yes, because of my uncle's story, I can see that this is true, and I want to know more, and I'm so curious. And so I actually went to my library app, Libby, huge fan. That's how I can read 60 books in a year. And I searched in soul contracts, and would you believe it, there was a book that showed up, Your Soul Contract Decoded. And I was like, oh my God. So I download this book from the library. I'm reading it. It's talking about how you can phonetically decode your name. I studied linguistics in college, so I'm like, phonetics, I know phonetics. This is made for me. And what's really interesting is when I did my hand by chart the first time, I was so into the phonetics that I really didn't follow the rules of the system, and I technically did the chart wrong. Because I was like, oh, when there's 2 letters in my last name, I'm just going to put it once, because the phonetics, it's just the one sound. And this vowel kind of really sounds more like that. Like, I really wasn't following the directions. And it turned out I did it wrong. But I love to tell people that story, because in the chart that I saw, and that for the first year of having some familiarity with the system, I thought was my chart. And one of the things it talked about was that I was here to build something. I had this 11-2 in the physical talents, and the 11 is a builder energy. And when it's in the physical triangle, that means it's more going to be maybe more brick and mortar in the physical world. So I kept asking myself for a year, what am I here to build? What am I going to build? Fast forward to about, and this is happening roughly December 2020. So fast forward a year, January 2022, I'm like, hey, you know what? I want to read that book again. This is in my mind. And I had been daydreaming during that period about building like a campus or a compound, and something that combines art and spirituality and science and research, and then translating what you learn into different languages, because Stephanie will probably appreciate this. So much of what goes out in the world is in English. If you don't speak English, that's not accessible to you. So I was like, we should have people doing discoveries and then other people who are translating that into languages all around the world so everyone can take part of it. I was like a campus, right? I was like, I want this whole campus, this compound. I want it to be huge. That's what I want to build. And then I got the book again. I actually went on to the practitioner software that practitioners that we use. I put my name into the computer. I just did it as spelled. I didn't do like I had done it before with all of the changing the phonetics and this and that. And it had been a while since I had looked at the specific numbers of my chart. So I didn't even notice right away that it was different until I got to certain placements. I was like, wait, I don't remember this from before. Or didn't it say this before? And I went and I found my notebook from like a year ago. I was like, this is not the same. So I'm reading more carefully the book now of how I should be translating my chart and realized what I put into the computer was accurate. And there's that initial reaction of, oh, I had the wrong thing for a year. And so quickly I was like, no, you needed to ask yourself that question of what you're here to build. And we got you to ask yourself that question. And because that question, that prompt isn't in the accurate chart, because that 11-2 energy, it's in the spiritual triangle in my quote unquote accurate chart, not the physical triangle. So it's more about a philosophy. It more suggests you're here to maybe pioneer a modality and not to build something brick and mortar. But it's like that vision I still hold on to. And I'm not, as Stephanie talks about, non-attachment. I'm not attached. I don't have to build it. But I never would have created that vision for myself if I hadn't asked myself the question, what am I here to build? So that already was such a story I love to bring to people. I think we get so caught up on, is this right? Is this wrong? Am I doing it right? It's like, well, what are you going to learn from it regardless? And does it really matter?
Do you think it was a lot about intuition, like asking yourself these questions? This is what you needed at the time. So even though you made the reading wrong, like quote unquote wrong, it was right for you at that time.
Exactly. It was the right information that I needed at that time. And when I was ready for the next step, I found the new information.
Wow. So what are some of when you were doing that work on either chart, because right, it's like you needed to hear both at certain times in your life. What were some of the things that you uncovered about like your soul contract that you were either like, oh my gosh, yes, that's awesome, or things that you were like, oh wow, what's this mean?
I mean, all of it, I think I approach with a that's awesome mentality, because even what the soul contract is really there to show you is what you've come to learn, what lessons you have chosen for yourself as a soul for this incarnation. And it's been so interesting in the chart that I found that is the proper one, if you will. I have a 7-7 in my physical karma. And this number is all about coming out of hiding, taking off your mask and showing up in the world as your authentic self. And it has the challenge of a fear of being seen. And I could instantly look back at my life and see once again how I had been guided through life circumstances to start to overcome that fear of being seen. That in middle school, I was asked by school administrators, like, hey, do you want to be the student representative on tours for potential parents? And because of that, when I got to high school, I was like, oh, I want to be we are the dragon. So dragon ambassador, and you give tours and you maybe show up as student ambassador at events and whatnot. And then I took on that role in college, tour guide and orientation leader. And it helped me both to be seen, but also with that 7 energy, I loved it because you got to wear your mask, right? You don't have to show up in this group as your authentic self. You show up as a representative. You have to be the face. So it's not quite your true, authentic, messy self. So that's still where there's still more of the journey and there's still more of the learning, but I can also see where I was guided to be working through that energy from a young age.
Wow.
I love that. And so reading your soul contract allowed you to see, in retrospect, see what you had to learn all these years, but how do you use it to move forward?
Yeah. So I see it like a language, and I see astrology like a language, tarot as a language, human design. They're all languages because energy, right? As humans, how do we communicate energy? You know, as humans, we need language. Having studied linguistics, I know that we understand something better when we have a word for it. So all of these modalities are just ways to put energy into human language. Mm-hmm. And so for me, it's in my life all the time because it's a language that I speak. It's constantly in the way that I'm viewing the world, the way that for you, Stephanie, right? You're existing in the US, speaking in English, but there's probably a lot of in French going on in your brain, right? Whether you're consciously translating or not, you know, it's there. And so it's like that. It is just literally part of the framework now in that I view the world because it's my language. So even when I'm listening to your show, just when I look at the episode titles, I'm like, oh, you have this episode perfectly imperfect. Well, that's 10-1 because that's perfectionism. And so there's themes on that. Oh, there's someone who's talking about addiction. Well, that's the 6 energy, has to do with addiction. Oh, this energy, when you're talking about how it's so difficult to rest, I'm like, well, that's the 12-3, which Stephanie, you have in your chart. You have a lot of 12-3s. No wonder you find it really difficult to rest.
Wow.
You know,
oh my
so
gosh.
I'm very curious now.
It's just there all the time. It's like, I cannot turn that off. It would be like telling you to turn off your mother tongue. It's like, well, no, it's just always there.
Wow.
Oh, that's so cool. I feel like this, oh, it makes me really like happy and excited for you that it's like this path opened up and here's this gift. And for you to have it is just like, I don't know what life is without that. Like, that's just how my brain works now. And I don't know, that's just so cool. So I just want to honor that and acknowledge that. Like, that's
Thank
so
you.
awesome that you just dove into it.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know, it's super cool.
Yeah. I mean, it's on the podcast that I had with another practitioner. We had the tagline of like, we speak soul contracts, right? Because it's just this language that we speak. It's in our how we think. And some of the interviews that we have are about, you know, diving in their 22 numbers in the system. So it's about a deep dive on each number with different soul contract practitioners. And then other episodes are other people come on and they're not soul contract practitioners. They don't know this system. And sometimes we do where one of us is kind of just listening to the person talk about their life and we're just taking notes on what we think is going to be in their chart. And sometimes we have their chart up during the interview. And as they talk, we're like, well, of course, because this number is here. And that's where this is coming from.
Wow.
Yeah.
And when you do soul contracts, like, do you have to sit and, you know, see, okay, these names, that means this or that, or like, is it really you see the names and very quickly because you are, first of all, we can see your passion, and second of all, like, you seems having ease into interpreting. So how do you manage, you know, when you are interpreting, I would say?
Yeah. I mean, I think that ease has come with the time, right? So like when I was first giving a reading to Ashley and other people from this group, when I had just that year. So Ashley and I met in 2022. There are 3 levels of practitioner training and I did them all in 2022. So when I first met Ashley, I'd just done 1 level, then I did the 2nd level and, you know, it got better. But I was just giving this advice to someone the other day who just did their 1st level of training. And she's like, how are you finding time to prep? And I'm like, yeah, it would take me 2 to 3 hours to prep when I started. And in time, pretty quickly, you know, that went down, but it's like, give yourself that time right now because yeah, you're going to sit there and you're going to go over every single aspect of all of those things. And now I can much more easily look at a chart, see what the themes are. And especially when I ask like, hey, what are you wanting to learn? You can start to really see it's like, oh, they mentioned this problem or they're curious about this. Well, yeah, I can see why that's coming up because that theme of isolation comes up so much in this chart. Or, you know, they'll even ask, why am I afraid to be seen? I'm like, well, because you have a 7-7 as your soul destiny. So it's part of your purpose to learn how to overcome that.
Wow. So what is like something that's dominant in your chart, like that you discovered?
Dominant in my chart. Oh, goodness. That's definitely going to be themes on worthiness for sure. You know, and you each actually have some of those numbers in your charts as well.
Oh, yeah. I was like,
So
yep.
I would love to hear more about our charts too.
Yes.
So, Stephanie, you and I have the same soul destiny. It's a 12-3 soul destiny. And whatever number, let me give y'all a little bit of structure on kind of what a chart is. So this will make a little bit more sense. there are two triangles, the physical and the spiritual. So one is going to be more of the numbers that are happening in the physical world around you. The others are more in the spiritual world, or that could also be more internally, what's going on internally. But there are three aspects, and the aspects are really important because there's the karma, which are your primary challenges and your lessons. And, the reason it's a challenge is that by overcoming that challenge, by navigating those obstacles, that's where the lesson is. It's on the other side, right, of that experience. Then there's also your talents. And these are your abilities that you come in to help you navigate those challenges. And then there's goals. And then when you take all of those together, we can discover your soul destiny. And your soul destiny acts like a more of a karmic or challenging number until you work through enough of that challenge that I like to say, it moves into the middle of your chart and really becomes your overarching life focus and life purpose, if you will. And really, that's kind of this basic structure. But at the end of the day, once the energies are there, you're going to have the challenges of the numbers that are in your talents, and you're going to have the talents of the numbers that are there and meant to be a lesson. It's just about in the moment, is it challenging you, or are you able to use that talent to help you work through something? But the reason I bring this up is just to say that we both have this 12-3 as a soul destiny, which means we're both challenged by the themes of the 12-3 energy. And the 12 is expansive. It always wants to expand and to grow, and it doesn't like to rest. I always describe this energy as, imagine you were going for a 20-mile bike ride, and, fine, great. And you go uphill, you start to go uphill. Okay, great. Our physical bodies can only do that for so long, right? But the 12-3 would be like, no, I want this whole 20-mile bike ride to be steeply uphill. That's insane. Like, any talented bike rider would be like, what the frick are you doing? We physically can't keep up with that. But the 12 is like, no, that up, growth, expand. And so that's where we have to become conscious of this pattern, because really what it is it's patterns. And it's like, you don't know you have a problem until you can't fix the problem until you recognize that you have one. It's like, well, you can't change a pattern until you recognize that you have one. So recognizing, I always feel like everything needs to happen right now. And it's like, okay, nope, I need to tell myself to sit down. I need to tell myself to rest. That's the 12 is the expansion part. The 3 is the worthiness part. There's a lot of worthiness that comes through the 3. So thinking about the society that we're in, we think our worth comes from our productivity, right? Our society teaches us that. So there's a lot of us who have to do that unlearning and that unprogramming in order to be like, I am inherently worthy. I am worthy when I wake up. I am worthy when I go to bed. I am worthy every second in between, regardless of what I do or do not do. And I am also worthy of rest. Like, I deserve rest. So that's a big lesson. The other number that's really tied in with worthiness is the 4 energy. And Ashley, you have 13-4 as your soul destiny. So both of y'all have those worthiness numbers in your soul destinies. And though at the 4, I love the 4 energy. It is about learning to trust in the flow of abundance from the universe. But how do we often block our own abundance? Because we don't think that we're worthy of it. So that's where the worthy aspect comes in. Yeah. So that's been a really big one in my chart, that sort of since learning about my soul contract, it was kind of like at that time of 2022, being like, ooh, this is a theme for me. This is something I need to work on. And I've really consciously been trying to work on that worthiness and recognizing my worthiness. And I had an Akashic Records reading earlier this year in 2025. And I was saying like, hey, can you give me, I had a reading with him a year prior in 2024. And I was like, hey, can you give me just like at the end, like how did last year go? Like, what do my guides think of like performance review for 2024? And they were like, you really operated from a place of worthiness. And I was just like,
yay! Congratulations.
So that felt so great. And what's really interesting is that, with numerology, you can kind of look at personal years, like how old are you? You take the digits of your age, you put them together, that's a personal year. And so I think about that with the numbers as well. Last year, 31, personal year, four energy, working on that worthiness, having that trust. And Ashley, you shared about how you kind of left your job, you took that leap of faith. I had the same thing happen for me, beginning of 2024. Spirit, all of a sudden in my head was just like, you're done. You're done with this job. You're gone. And I was like, what? Oh no. And they were like, do you even really want to work there anymore? I was like, no, I don't. They're like, okay, you're done.
Mm-hmm.
But this year, it's so funny because the Akashic Records reading he was saying for 2025, it's all about my voice and using my voice. And this year, I'm in a 5 personal year, and the 5 is about speech and it's about expression and expressing your truth. So once again, I'm just like, oh yeah, that completely matches. Like the guides are just saying, like, yeah, the themes of the personal years, that's what you're here to do this year. So
Wow.
it fits.
I'm speechless because first of all, we have the same numbers, but 10 years after. And wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Like, and all of that you can see within the name.
Yes. So we take your name from when you're born. And this is all based off of the principle that sound is creative. And so that these sound frequencies, these energies are creating your life, And again, with thinking about the intentionality that the soul wants to have certain experiences in order to learn certain lessons for its own evolution and growth. And so is going to want certain experiences to manifest in order to learn that lesson. And so this is where it can be interesting. And I've really had to do a lot of sitting with for myself. How can you not be dismissive to people who maybe find this triggering or traumatic? And how do you not bypass? But how do you also, for myself, like recognize that I see truth in this, right? And how do you find that balance of being really aware and cognizant and not do more harm? I've seen some videos on TikTok, and they were not talking about this soul contract system, but just the more general soul contracts and agreements, and saying that it's so toxic and part of New Age spirituality, and so toxic to say that, you chose this mother who was going to hurt you and that you chose that. And as someone who is maybe the child and is hurt, how toxic and that can be. And I really would always take the moment to like sit and process and be like, okay, let me really listen to this and not just dismiss it because it doesn't agree with my own views, right? Okay, how can I take these both into account? And one of the things I would think about is like, yes, probably you did choose this mother to be toxic and to maybe be a narcissist or, whatever that specific situation is going to be. And maybe that's the case because, yeah, maybe in a past life, it was role reversal, right? You were the one treating her that way. And now you incarnated with the intention of saying, okay, now I'm the one who's going to experience that from the child's perspective. Maybe it's that. But maybe it's also that you and your mother have been playing this out in many lifetimes, and you're meant to learn to set the boundaries and to go no contact and say, I'm not going to accept this anymore. Just because the contract is in place for you to have experienced it doesn't mean the contract was in place that you put up with it.
Wow, I love that perspective because I also heard that, your soul choose, your body, and the soul choose who your parents are. But, I didn't have a traumatic childhood. However, when I speak with people that had a traumatic childhood, that had, events that were insanely traumatic, they don't want to talk about it. It's hard for me to say, hey, well, you chose your parents.
Right.
Like it's a difficult conversation to have. So I love this, this truth bomb basically that you just gave here, where, it's from past lives and there is a reason for you to say, I'm going to stop now. This is my boundary. And that's why you have to learn and to go through it again, because without challenges, you won't grow. So,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like it's like, yes, I could, of course, look at what from my own life were my challenges, but in the grand scheme of things, I had a pretty easy life and childhood comparatively. Like I am someone, the older that I get, the more I realize just how loved I am by my parents and by their friends, and like an abundance, right, of love and mother figures where some people don't really get one. And it's like, oh my God, only realizing with that ability to see other people's experiences, how lucky I am. And Stephanie, this is another number you and I both have. We have the same spiritual karma number, which is the 99. And the 9 is the most powerful number in this system. But when it's in a challenge position, right, the lesson then is in power. You often start from a place of disempowerment. And the journey of the 9 is to go from a place of being disempowered to start to own and speak, that disempowerment in order to overcome it, to stand and reclaim your power. One of the ways I always talk to people about doing that is every time you set and every time you enforce a boundary, it's like a drop in the bucket back to you of your power, right? So to be able to own your power, and that the final sort of evolution of you, if you will, of the 9 is using your power responsibly. And so many of us who have 9s as a karmic number, we misused power in a past life, right? So it's again where you think about, from the soul chose to have this experience. It's like, okay, well, I misused power in a past life. So now I need to experience what it is to be disempowered. But also I need to go through the journey of claiming back that power. And once I have it in hand, because that's what happens so often, right? If you have been abused, you become an abuser, you continue this cycle. But to use it responsibly, when you're the one with the power, will you use it responsibly? And so, Stephanie, you talk so much about non-attachment, and I love that. That's been definitely a struggle for me to actually really get into a place of practicing that. And it does have to be a practice. You're not always excellent at it. But I think that goes along with that is a non-judgment, like a non-attachment to even an experience. And something that really helped me with that was the Conversations with God book series. And I should have looked his name up before because I always kind of mess it up. It's like Neil Donald Walsh. But I may have mixed up the order of the name. I think that's right, though. I think I got it. But he talks about that, especially in the third book, and with those books, he's channeling in God, source, the universe, and they happen over many years because there's multiple books. And the third book in particular, the writer, Neil, pretty sure his name was Neil, he would be like, okay, but what about this? Or what about that? But this is so hard to experience. And God is like, yeah, but me and spirit, because we are all God. He's like, I don't have judgment on that being good or bad. It's just the human in you that is judging that as bad. And that was like, oh, whoa, because it is so hard for us to not have judgment on this is a good experience or a bad experience. But from the universe's perspective, it's just experience. There is no this good or bad, right? It's kind of this non-attachment. And where I'm able to kind of not go bypassing, right? I've really had to practice how can both be true. It's like, well, we are humans. And I think this is where our egos come in, not in a bad way, but just in a very human way of the soul, the higher self is really not the one that experiences, these challenges and they're kind of beyond a place of emotion or feeling. Like they can't feel pain because that just simply doesn't exist. But the ego is here with us on earth and experiences it. And the ego is the one that's like, that freaking hurt. I don't want to go through that again. I don't want that experience. Like, this is not good, but if we're able to just hold both, right? It's like, yes, that really did hurt. But the part of me that chose to have that experience doesn't actually have to feel the pain, and it doesn't have judgment on this being a good or bad experience. It's just an experience. And it's not to say you have to see things that way, right? That's another journey for me as an Aries sun to learn I don't have to always be right. Like, what? That's news to me. But just kind of for myself, that's how I can see that both are true, because there are those two perspectives. There's like the human experience and the ego experience or perspective. And then there's this higher self, higher soul, universe, spirit perspective that just isn't down in the mud. It's kind of like you lose the forest for the trees, or it can go both ways. When you're an eagle and a hawk and a bird and you're flying above the forest, it's really different than a snake who's slithering on the ground.
Yeah.
Wow. I feel like there's so much packed in that.
I know.
I love it though, like both can be true. And sometimes your mind is like, no, duality, like one or the other. And you're like, I love how you said too about like it is just what it is. Because I literally pulled that card this week and it's been happening for me where things I could view it as like, oh my gosh, this is happening to me. But I'm like, oh my gosh, this is happening to me, and just flipping it. I'm like, wow, like old me would have been like victim, and new me is like, cool, this is just like another lesson. I don't even know what's going to happen. So it's interesting like that mindset shift. I like that. Just it is what it is. There's no good, bad. It's just an experience I'm having.
Yeah. It's hard to practice, right? Because we do get our feelings hurt and we do have experiences that we don't want to have, and it's not comfortable. But this job that I had, and we organize volunteer abroad programs for teens, and one of the things we would say all the time is discomfort is where the growth happens. So that's something I think about a lot. And one of my mottos since doing soul contracts is to say lean into your lessons.
Ooh.
And I forget who first said this, but there's such a popular kind of quote in the spiritual community as well, is what you resist persists. So my answer to that is to say, again, lean into your lessons. Well, what is it trying to teach you? Lean into it. Discomfort is where the growth happens. I think so many of us are like, yes, I want to grow. I want to grow. I don't want to be uncomfortable though. It's like, well, that's where the growth happens.
100%. And yeah, I do believe that life, we have this idea that life is happening to you, but it's happening for you. And like you shared, there are so many lessons that we can learn through challenges, is if only we think it's for you and it's a gift. But it's not easy. It's not easy. Like you get triggered, it brings some like icky feelings within yourself, and sometimes you are like, why me? The questions, why me? So I love that the soul contract can help you, understand why you in some way.
Yeah.
So have you seen that doing the soul contract has helped you navigating through challenges? So you started to see the patterns and you know your soul contract. So now you could see exactly, oh, this is happening for me because da da da.
Exactly. All of the time. All of the time. And it helps me to see like, oh, there's this sex energy, which is so creative, but in the challenge part, it wants to do too many things at once. It takes on too many projects and then it all kind of falls apart. So it's really constantly reminding myself, prioritize. What are your priorities? If you have reached your capacity, it's like add it to the list of things to come, but don't try to pick that up and do it right now. You are not in a place to pick up a new project, and you know that. And it makes it a lot easier to kind of just say no, because it's like, no, I just know that the things that I'm doing are my priorities. That's great. I love that inspiration. I'm going to maybe, I'm going to write it down. I'm going to kind of get it out a little bit, but I'm not starting that. I don't have the capacity. That's been a big one. Very helpful.
I hear you. So do you have, some kind of reminders for you to say, hey, don't start a project?
Not quite. But yeah, it's just because I think it's just so in my head all of the time. I'm really good with holding that sort of in my head, so I don't literally have to write it down, but it's like mentally in my mental vanity, where you might put all your reminders, it's there. It's there in the mind for sure.
Man, I am like so intrigued now. I just want to hear about all of our charts.
Yeah, me too.
I'm
I
like,
know. Well, with our maybe a few minutes, I did really want to chat with y'all about like some of even what you're like learning together, because you do have some
Yes.
you do have some you have some of the same placements, which depending on where they are can be a challenge. Because you both have for Stephanie, it's from your birth name, and for Ashley, it's from your common use name from birth. So like first and last name for your maiden name. of this physical karma 8-8. And this number is very grounded. It can also want to isolate and not be as much part of society. It can have the tendency to want to think feelings instead of feeling them.
Mm.
And so when you have this both in the same number, because it's a karmic position, this can create what we call clash and like create friction. So it's like you're triggering it in each other.
Oh
But
no.
yeah, which can
Interesting.
happen. I mean, it can, right? That's how the energy can act. But it also just depends on like, well, how much have you worked through on your own? Because if you've already worked through it, then there's nothing really left to trigger. You know?
Mhm.
It could also be one of the themes with the 8 is that it's the learning the lesson that you can't fix other people.
Mm.
Right. So it's like that could come up where it's like something goes on and maybe you're having to learn, like, okay, as Stephanie is thinking, I can't fix Ashley, or Ashley's thinking, I can't fix Stephanie. But it could also be that that's going on with some other relationship in your life. And because you both have really had to learn that, you're consciously telling each other, hey, remember, we can't fix other people, you know? And so it's kind of like it might not always come up in your
Mm.
conscious relationship, and I just mean like where you are seeing it, but energetically there is this kind of triggering it. If there's anything that you haven't been learning with those lessons, you know, it's going to kind of come up in this time that you're together, because it's again, with all of it, you came with the intention of learning the lesson. So it's like anytime it can be like, okay, let's get this to come to the surface so that we address it and we learn it. It's really beautiful. What's interesting is that even though you both have that karmic clash, you also have the same physical talent of 8-8. So for Stephanie, again, it's in your birth name. And once again, you and me having same energies in my common use name from birth. I have that physical karma, physical talent 8-8. I have the same, having both of them too. And then Ashley, you have that physical talent 8-8 from your birth name. So once again, you have kind of the clashing of those energies, but you also have the talent and like the unlocked energy. And when you have the same talent as somebody, it's like a friendship. It's you get each other, right? There's this kinship. So it's part of what brings you together. And then Ashley, in your common username from birth, you have the soul destiny 12-3, which is what Stephanie has in her birth name. So when you have the same soul destiny as someone, it really does show that you're heading in the same direction. It's like having the same talent, but even more, you know, like you're really both here to head in this direction. And the 12-3, you know, I talked about that expansion and the worthiness and the learning how to rest, but it's also about teaching. The 3 is teaching from the soul energy. It's a communication number. And so the fact that you've created this podcast together in order to share information is like really beautiful. And you come together in that in this really beautiful way. And then, you know, you both have these 9s in your chart, which again, we talked about that disempowerment theme, but they're also, it's a catalytic energy. So whichever energy is in the other person's chart, you're really catalyzing that and being able to bring change into each other and helping them, you know, to step into power in really beautiful ways. So, I mean, those are just a couple, but yeah, it's like you have this really interesting relationship of like grounding each other, but also catalyzing each other into change and ways where you get each other with the same talents. But yeah.
Wow.
That's
Aw,
beautiful.
I know, like
And I do see, you know, I do see that. I do see that the sharing, the teaching, the communication, the, you know, like wanting to fix others and helping too much others.
mhm. That's like
And,
the codependency, like the dark side. Like, oh, I can
Mhm.
fix it. I can fix it.
Yeah. Well, Ashley, you have 11-2 as a spiritual karma number, and that's where we see codependency as one of the energies for it. Because the 11 is about structure, but again, if it's a challenge, then you often may be inherently lacking some structure. So other people come into your life and they provide the structure for you, and you become dependent on that structure. And so you become dependent on the person. And so it's seen
Mm.
as whenever, if someone's talking about, why do I have codependent relationships? I'm like, where's the 11-2? Right? Where is
Mhm.
it? And
Wow.
so, you know, Stephanie in her spiritual karma has that 9-9. And so again, that catalyzing that 11-2, she could almost kind of bring that out in you. She's like triggering that in you, triggering for you to see it and address it and heal it, but could kind of trigger that in you as well.
Wow.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I love that. And I could see that in some way because I'm very direct, and I give a lot of advice or what I think. I share my opinions, and I'm very transparent and with Ashley on what I see or what I think, and then she can take what she wants and leave what she wants. But yeah, I could see that. Yeah. Oh
It's cool
wow, that's
too, because
interesting.
I know, because I feel like Steph and I's relationship is like we are each other's like cheerleaders and catalysts for growth. And like when we have big things that happen, we leave each other voice memos all the time. Sometimes they're 30 seconds, sometimes they're 18 minutes. But it's like she's someone that I'm like, I want to tell you about this thing that just came up and how I worked through it. Or I just had this really difficult thing that happened. So, and we haven't known each other very long, but it's like this safe space. And we don't even live near each other, but there's some connection that we have where I feel a safety in sharing with her. And I think likewise too. And we just build each other up and support when needed and give advice when needed, or sometimes when, you just get it. So, but yeah, that's really cool to hear. Oh,
Yeah, I
uh,
love that. And coming back to the judgment piece that you share, like I feel that we have no judgment. Like I love listening to Ashley, like and listening to her story, what her challenges, and I don't feel like there is no judgment when we have a conversation or with a voice memos. Like it's really cheerleaders, like soul sisters.
mhm.
And so yeah, I'm speechless. I got goosebumps when you were sharing that. I'm like, oh.
And then the other chart I had to look at, of course, is for the name of your podcast. So the Abundant Soul podcast, as it is now, it has a 5-5 in the foundation. And for Stephanie, you have a 5-5 energy coming through from your common use name. So if we don't look at your middle name, so your first and last name, there's a 5-5 in that physical karma. So whatever, like a business is an extension of you. And so whatever businesses are there, when they relate to your charts, it's sort of saying like, this is going to be a place where you can work through that energy. So I mentioned 5 is about, connecting to and speaking your truth. So it becomes a place for you to even more learn how to do that. Now, I will say 5 is a difficult energy to have in business because it's ungrounded and it niches your audience. So if you imagine like a funnel, it's like you turn that funnel upside down. So if you were my clients and we were like naming something, I would be like, no, this is not it. You don't want this. This is the opposite of what you want in terms of an attracting, energy. This is the opposite. And it also has 9-9 in the success. And so again, we talked about those 9s. It's so powerful, but it can be overwhelming, right? So like a 5 energy is very, very sensitive. A 2 energy is very, very sensitive. And then a 9 energy is this like fire breathing dragon at the door, or in this case, it's maybe not quite at the door because it's not in the foundation, but it's still like, ooh, this can be a little overpowering for people. And so it would be really interesting. Of course, we don't get to know every single person who listens to our podcast, but it would be so interesting to see like, well, do a lot of them have 9s in their charts? And that's like they, your dragons talk to their dragons. But I actually had remembered, I went back and looked at our conversations that when Ashley was telling me that she was going to launch this podcast, I was like, I would do a slight tweak to the name because I typically would not recommend this energies of having 5-5 and 9-9 and call it just the Abundant Soul. Because now the Abundant Soul, just don't say podcast as the name. You have a 7-7 foundation. The 7 is magnetic. It draws people into you. It's like that funnel that you have turned upside down, put it the right way. Huge funnel that magnetizes people to you. And especially with an online sort of like internet sort of businesses, it's like you need that. You need it to just be bringing all the people to you. And then it has a 12-3. Once again, that expansion, that teaching, beautiful. And then an 8-8, that grounded energy and like helping people to almost get into their bodies in a way. Like that's what that energy is all about. And what's really beautiful is that it connects even more to both of you. Ashley has a lot of the 7-7 energy. Stephanie, you have some as well. The 12-3 you both have in the different places, and the 8-8. So it's just like, it just becomes this place for you to be working through either your challenges or to reach your goals or to achieve your soul destinies. So that's my recommendation. And I have to now practice my non-attachment and not care if you take it or not. That has been a challenge for me as a practitioner. She'll be like, you can't control if they take your advice. When I'm just like, but no, but you need to, but you need to.
Wow.
I love
I mean,
that.
yes, because once you started saying that, I was like, man, if we were just the abundant soul, I was like, what about retreats? What if we just start doing things and like I was like, we expansion, right? Like you said, like be a magnet, but also expanding. Like now you got my wheels turning.
Now I will say the one thing to be careful of when you have that 12-3 is because it can be that burnout energy. So you both need to have those strategies in place. You need to have that awareness, right? You need to be checking yourself and not burn out, right? You're going to have to consciously work at not burning out because that energy is going to want to keep you going and growing and moving all the time. And so I always am really saying to people, I'm like, you need to be conscious of this and have those plans in place to not burn out. It's not worth it to burn out.
Hmm.
Burnout is real for us.
Yep.
Yes.
Me too. My podcast had a 12-3 and I definitely burned out from that podcast. And now I'm just like, okay, I'm learning a lot more. And I see how I didn't even mean to. I didn't think it was too much until it was too late, until I was already burnt out.
Yeah, why it's hitting home real. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
That's huge.
So
And
everybody listening, if you see it's called the Abundant Soul, now you know why.
100%. Yeah, wow. Thank you so much. We are coming sadly to the end, and
I know.
I haven't talked to you
time
forever.
flies. Yes, me too. Wow, so many nuggets. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. I loved everything that you shared.
Thank you.
And are you still doing soul contracts for people or?
Absolutely. So I do private readings. If you've really intrigued, also just by hearing about this, I do have a podcast. We don't have new episodes anymore, but there is a deep dive on every number in the system. So you get to just hear how that's shown up for people. And yeah, it's a great resource and tool. And so that's Let's Talk Vibes.
Wow. And again, thank you for following your passions because it's fun just to listen to you and you do such a great job of like communicating it and explaining it. And like Steph said, like your passion for it just shines through. It just feels like you're doing what you're meant to do. So that's
Thank
so
you.
cool.
From the astrology perspective, that's Aries in the 10th house, and being an Aries sun in the 10th house, it's just like, yeah, you're seen for your passion. And I love it. I love that. I love that I don't feel like I have to try, right? It's like that is that being authentic self. I'm like, I do love this. You can tell that I love it. Great.
Oh, we can tell. We can tell.
It's inspiring.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you both. Again, I've just so loved the conversations you've had so far. I can't wait to hear what else is coming and to get to be part of it. I'm so honored.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye,
Yay.
ladies.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for joining us on this journey of self-discovery and spiritual awakening. We hope the stories and insights we've shared today have inspired you to embrace your abundant soul and live your life with more presence, purpose, and passion.
Remember, the path to awakening is unique for each of us, but we're all connected by our yearning for deeper meaning and authenticity. So keep an open heart and mind and trust that the universe will guide you exactly where you need to go.
This has been the Abundant Soul Podcast. See you next Sunday as we continue to explore the depths of spiritual awakening and personal growth.